start the show with you two, and a topic of which you would have quite a bit of experience, which is Andrew Luck deciding to walk away from the NFL. And just following along on Twitter, most ex-NFL players that I've seen talk about this Andrew Luck situation say, hey, look, man, it's your life, and it's really hard to battle through those types of injuries, and everybody across the board seems to respect his decision. But of course, the fans in Indy not happy, and some media people taking the opportunity to turn up the heat on the takes about Andrew Luck. So I'd love if you guys gave me your perspective just on what came about with Luck, how he retired, and that decision.
Well, people love to have opinions about what professional athletes should do, how they live their lives, because they think they know, you should be throwing the ball to this guy more. Therefore, I should be telling you how you live your life more. So, I think for the most part, people, media included, were very supportive of Andrew Luck and his decision. I think it's like a 9-to-1, type of ratio. I don't think there's that many people out there that are, sort of, calling out Andrew Luck for retiring or quitting. But there are a few. Dan Dockich was one. Doug Gottlieb was another. And, I'm surprised Skip Bayless didn't throw his name in the hat just to be controversial. And listen, we live in this country where sort of to each their own. And, Andrew Luck quitting football has no effect on my life whatsoever. Even if I was a Colts fan, at the end of the day, people get to do what they want to do. People are like comparing it to, their parents who were a teacher or they were a coal miner and, whatever, and they never quit. But it's like, well, they also could have if they wanted to. And they also probably didn't have $50-60 million in the bank, right? So football is a very, very violent sport. Much less if you could tell a baseball player or a golfer, you shouldn't retire. Like everyone gets to do it their own deal. And to tell a football player that they have to play longer for you, whether it's Barry Sanders or Gale Sayers way back in the day or now Andrew Luck, to me sort of blows my mind. It's like calling out a boxer who decides to retire young. Like, it's a brutal sport. You get in there and go hit your head in and all those things. It's not fun rehabbing. It's not fun being injured. It's not fun feeling your body sort of fall apart, which I start to feel a little bit as I get now into my 40s. So to each their own, and congratulations, Andrew Luck, on a wonderful career. And maybe he does decide to come back somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that's interesting is people look at athletes different, I think, because of the amount of money he's made, and just saying, like, you should be happy. You should be able to put up with this because you have this. If I had that much money, if I had what you had, it would be easy. But there's a lot he's gone through, a lot he's dealt with, and it's within his right to shut it down, just like it would be for anybody else. And like you said, I think the one thing is it's a shame. He's a talented guy.
Yeah,
I think
fun to watch.
He could have done a lot of great things. And the reason I think most people, it's not like he was out there a slappy his whole career, right? I mean, here's a guy who clearly gave everything he had, probably to a fault, right? Like Andrew should have taken a little bit of the Eli Manning playbook maybe and protected himself a little bit more. But, I mean, for a number of years there, he was deep 7-step drop, standing back there 3 times, padded 3 times, throwing the laser beam because he could.
I blame a little bit of the previous coordinators that he had.
Yep,
he did not have coaches that protected him. I don't remember the coordinator's name. I believe he came from college. And is what Brooks said.
Pep Hamilton.
A lot of 7-step drops, holding the ball in the pocket.
They didn't have a great offensive line.
No, and T.Y. Hilton was trying to get him big plays down the field because he's so fast, and so he's holding on to the ball. And sometimes that stuff worked out, and other times it didn't. And he really did get beat up more, I would say, than your average quarterback. But there's a guy that I know. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, but there's a guy that I know who quit his corporate job. And now like runs a yoga studio, right? Just sort of made that decision. He was no longer going to sort of try to climb the corporate ladder, had a very successful job. His wife is a corporate person and decided to do that. And it's like, to each their own. That's what he decided to do. The difference is, Andrew Luck, I get to watch him, or he was on my fantasy team, or I'm a Colts fan. I would hope he help us win. And now it's not the case. But I got a feeling this is a non-easy decision for him to make. He decided to make it. I think it's sort of lunacy for somebody else to second guess somebody else's decision, in particular in a sport as violent as football.
So we know the physical strain that he went through. I mean, he had the lacerated kidney, he had the shoulder surgery. I mean, it's like those graphics that they'll show on TV where they got little lines that point to each thing that's wrong with the guy's body. He had them all over the place. even just by the age of 29, in an era where quarterbacks are playing longer. He took a lot of injuries along the way. But the interesting part to me was the mental part of dealing with those injuries along with the pressure of being an NFL player. And that's something that you guys know that I don't. And I guess I would like to hear you discuss it, because to me, being in the locker room all the time, I feel like you get the sense of just how much pressure there is. If you're a star player, there's pressure to be great. If you're not a star player, there's pressure to put food on your family's table by keeping a job. And I think it can get really, really overwhelming for a lot of players.
Well, I think we have the wrong guests on this show today, because you really want to talk about guys who felt the pressure of being healthy for a 16-game schedule, year after year after year, or decade after decade. Brooks and I are not those two guys.
I mean, paper cuts holding the clipboard, though. I mean,
well, just holding on to that job, though. I mean,
it's a different stress. It's not coming back from. What I'm trying to say is we didn't come back from injuries or have to deal with constant punishment. And I had some injuries when I would play some 3, 4, 5 game stretches and deal with some things, but not major surgery type deals. Labrum tears are terrible, and he dealt with that last year. And it's not easy to. I have been an IR one time. I broke my wrist. I was holding a field goal, went down, made the tackle on like a end of the half 60-yarder.
It's a good way to do it, though. If you're going to get hurt, making a tackle is.
Made a tackle, and that's a whole other story. But to end up breaking my, it was like so it was about 5 weeks left. It was like Thanksgiving weekend. And it sucked being on IR. I mean, it just was I don't know. It's
you're like you were a ghost.
Yeah, it was a strange deal, and you're not out there, and you're not, you're on the team, but it doesn't feel like you're on the team, and it's not like a woe is me thing. It's just like you have a lot more time to contemplate a lot of things too, and he's a lot of time to think about his life and what he wants to do. He's got enough money to do whatever he wants, and I tell you what, you play football, you make enough money to literally do whatever you want. I think that's a pretty dang successful career.
I don't think the pressure for him was. I don't think having all that money and him having financial independence mattered to him. Obviously, it matters to him and his family, but I think the pressure he felt was the one you didn't mention, was this franchise is kind of betting on him.
Yeah.
Right. Like these guys are looking at him going, "It's you. Like you have to do this for us," and especially with Peyton that came before him. Mm-hmm. And I think every time you get hurt and every time you miss time and every time you fall further and further behind kind of the pace, I think it just
and that's probably where the backlash is.
Yeah.
Is the fact that everyone goes, hey, we got a really good team. They were one of the best turnaround teams last year. Frank Reich did an incredible job. And he started off the year sort of. I mean, his arm strength was not there for the first couple of games of the year last year, and it got better as the season went on. But that everyone was banking on him. Yeah. Like hey, we get Andrew back healthy, and then he got this other mysterious injury. I mean, who knows how many injuries he's actually had? Mm-hmm. These are just the ones that have shown up, on medical things for the game. I mean, believe me. I probably had 5 injuries for every one I actually announced to my training staff. You sprain an ankle in practice, I'm not going to tell anybody, unless I absolutely have to. And so who knows how many injuries he had in high school and college and in his, 8-year NFL career or something like that. So, tough deal because he's fun to watch. And, when he's healthy, he's a top probably 7-8 quarterback in the NFL.
Were you guys offended by the fact that fans booed him, or not surprised, or what was your reaction?
There's not much that surprised me as far as fans go, and I think there's so many opinions now. There's so much information out there. Everybody feels so. And I think that's where they look at athletes different, right? Like you're supposed to do this for me, and there's kind of that feeling, which is fine. I don't know if that's right, wrong, or different, but it doesn't surprise me, that's for sure. Because you spend all day on Twitter, and all of a sudden it's just like, no, you're letting me down.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for fans, a lot of times, and the NFL has created this with great marketing, great games, great advertising, all these things that it's personal to them. If you're a Minnesota Vikings fan or a Pittsburgh Steelers fan or an Indianapolis Colts fan, everyone has jerseys now. Everyone's, it's an investment. Tickets are not cheap, and so it's personal to them. Mm-hmm. When really it should be, I would think less personal, just entertainment. And hey, it didn't work out, and we move on to the next person. But it is personal. But that's the passion of NFL fans, and so. As Brooks said, nothing really surprises me with NFL fans, and that's not a knock on them. That people are hardcore, and people lose their minds when their team doesn't make the playoffs, or they get depressed after they lose games. And college football too. I mean, I live in Omaha. I first moved there. I remember it was a Saturday night. I went downtown. I hung out with a couple friends, and it was like 8 o'clock. It was a beautiful night, 75 degrees. It's early September, and it was a ghost town. And I'm like, well, I figured the weekends, this place is pretty busy down here in the old market in Omaha, Nebraska, especially a night like tonight. And people are like, no, the Huskers lost today. And I was like, well, what does that have to do with anything? So you can't go out for a couple of drinks or for dinner after the Huskers lose? No, you don't. People go home and they they go on chat rooms and they yell at blame the head coach and try to get him fired. So people are very, very passionate about football, but I think that's with the fans that booed.
Well, I've said that to people who are big Vikings fans who say, "Man, you get to cover the team. You're doing my dream job." Like, well, not exactly. If you're emotionally invested, you'd probably want to punch one of the guys after they, fumble a punt or miss a field goal or something else. Like, if you can't take the emotion out of it, then you end up doing things that aren't rational, which booing Andrew Luck is not rational at all because of how much he's given to your franchise. Like you said, the setup was not always great for him, and here he would just go out and win 11 or 12 games every single year.
Yeah.
And I guess before we wrap up just the Andrew Luck conversation and take a break here, just tell me what you guys see when you watch Andrew Luck, because from my lesser trained eye, I thought he was a find a way to win guy no matter what. Like, even when he might have 1 touchdown, 2 picks, the fantasy people will be all mad at him or whatever, but he was able to make a great throw into a tight window at any time. He'd make an athletic play and escape the pocket and run for a first down. He'd hang in and take a big hit. And to me, that's how I will remember him, assuming he doesn't make a comeback, is just that guy was a winner for that franchise. And considering the pressure that it must be to replace Peyton Manning, I can't even imagine that. And to just come in and win without the best team all the time. I mean, I was just always impressed with him.
I think that guy is, to be honest, I think he's a warrior. And he decided enough's enough, and that is the way he played. In some ways, he was sort of like Favre, where he was going to go out there and continue to try to fight for his football team. There was a great clip I saw on Twitter this morning. It's he and Chuck Pagano. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it's 3 or 4 years ago. And they're obviously getting beat badly by somebody, 3-4 touchdowns late in the game. It's mid to late season, and Andrew is talking about, hey, leave me in. I don't want to come out. This is not the way I sort of want to finish this game. I'll protect myself. I'll throw the ball away. I'm not going to take hits. And Pagano has to convince him by saying, listen, we need you. What's the best decision for this football team? Basically, I have to take you out because we got a division game next week and we're in the hunt. And the only thing that could happen bad is him getting hurt. And here's Luck trying to go back in, just to keep fighting with his brothers out there. And to me, that showed, how much heart he does have. And it's no one else's decision to retire except for an actual individual. And my deal is hats off to Andrew Luck.
Yeah, I second all that. I think sometimes your greatest strength is also your greatest curse. And I think that happened to him a little bit because when you say, what do you think of him? That's exactly the image that comes to my mind is there was never a question in my mind, nor there should be in anybody else's, that he was 100% committed to being a part of that team, to doing anything he could, big or small, for his team to win football games. And I appreciate that. I think it's a little bit of a throwback. I also think it's probably what got him in a little bit of trouble sometimes. Mm-hmm. So, but I couldn't have more respect for him as somebody that played the position. And on top of it all, he could throw it. I mean, he could
really throw it. Strong athlete. He sure reminded Carson Wentz. They similar. I mean, Carson takes some hits. Yeah. Big athletes can run, and they will run, and that's sometimes you take more hits. Mm-hmm. That's how Carson got hurt a couple years ago with his ACL. So that could be a similar type of quarterback that's younger that is going to take a lot of hits over the course of the next 5 or 6 or 7 years. By the way, remember Jake Locker?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he retired at like 25 or 26 because he had so many injuries.
First round draft pick.
Yep. Tennessee.
I think number 8 to Tennessee.
Yeah.
I think played 2 years, and he shut it down.
Yep.
And people didn't really say much. He was a bust or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Right. He didn't owe anybody anything. Yeah. So it's just the fact that Andrew Luck was so good.
Right.
Is why people I think were upset. Now I will say this. Pretty cool deal that the Colts decided to basically leave all that signing bonus money and stuff they could have gotten back. My guess is to possibly leave that door open a year, 2 years, 3 years. Those things do heal up, and he still would be in his prime.
What do you put the odds at right now? Like that he's back at some point? Like, do you? Because I think there's a decent
Jason
chance.
Witten just came back for like year 72.
I mean, how about Randall Cunningham?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's 50-50.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think you put the line at 50-50, I think you'd get pretty good.
Yeah, 50-50 within 2 years. But once he goes to like that third-year mark, he obviously enjoys life outside of football, and I don't think he's coming back.
One more point on him, and just something that impressed me that I didn't really realize until now more things have come out. When T.Y. Hilton put out a message on Instagram, Twitter, whatever it was, and just said that he was crying every time he thought about it, and it's his best friend, retiring here, and how much he cares about him. Forging that type of relationship with your teammates as a star quarterback, generational talent, seems like virtually impossible. Well, you played behind Favre's age, and he seemed like a guy who could do it. But how rare is that? I mean, to me, because it's like Rodgers is sort of above the team, and guys like that often are. But, it didn't seem like Luck came across that way at all.
No, I think, listen, the guy still has a flip phone. All right? He doesn't have a smartphone, so he's not sitting there on Twitter. He's not a attention seeker. He feels very honest, like in his press conferences. He's almost he's almost like a nerd athlete, which you don't get that combination, very often. He's extremely authentic. I think hats off to his parents of how he was raised. And it's how he played the game. It's how he worked. I think he always had that professional athlete, sort of mentality that helped him, whether it's at Stanford or in the NFL, of like, this is the best way to go. And I can definitely see why his teammates loved him. And part of that was going back to that Chuck Pagano clip of him wanting to play at the end of a football game. Players love that. And so if he was that way in the middle of the season, he probably was similar during training camp, or that whole thing, as you said, sort of the anti-Rodgers. He never probably treated anybody different. 1 through 53, they were all his teammates.
Well, and I think that speaks to a few things. Number one is he was always really talented. Number two, he's around it from a young age. Mm-hmm. So what I think that gave him was that true, authentic confidence, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he was so secure with who he was, because it's a vulnerable spot to be in. I mean, you know it. Like, you're the guy, and all of a sudden you're getting pinged, and what happens? Guys just kind of remove themselves from it because it's different. I mean, you're the quarterback. It's just a different deal a little bit where, the 80-year-old woman in the 50th row knows when the quarterback screws up. And even if he didn't, she's going to blame him. There's no other position like that. So I think you need a guy that's special that can kind of go the other way. And I think that's why